They say Rome wasn't built in a day, but you could build this Roman helmet in one.
Hi, my name is Chris, and I just can't stop making things. Today I'm going to show you how to make an amazing Roman helmet with some foam and hot glue. Okay, so the first thing you need to do is measure your head. That'll tell you what size of pattern you're going to need to print. Print it off, making sure the scale is set to actual size or 100%, and then grab a clear coffee table, stick your light underneath, and start taping the pattern pieces together. Thanks to the coffee table light combo, you can see through your pages so you can line up the crosses on them. Now you've got yourself a pattern that you can cut up with some scissors. Cut as close to the line as you dare, and pretty soon you'll have a bunch of pieces of cut up paper. For any of the pattern pieces that need flipping in the future, make sure to trace the alignment marks and mark them on the back side. Now grab a sheet of 6 to 7 millimeter thick EVA foam and start tracing the patterns onto the foam. I suggest using a fine tipped paint pen so it won't bleed through any paint you paint later on. For both the neck guard and plume top, you'll want to trace it once, flip it over, lining up the center line, and then trace it again. That way when you cut it out, it'll be just one piece instead of two. Make sure to extend the alignment marks to the inside of the pieces and label them. Most of the pieces get traced twice, once right side up and once upside down. Mark the right side up ones with an A after the number and the upside down ones with a B. There's some more pieces to cut from 2mm foam, but we'll leave those for later. For now, let's get out a super sharp knife and start cutting. If your knife isn't exquisitely sharp, get a brand new blade. It'll save you a lot of headaches. Now, most of the cuts you want to make nice straight vertical cuts. However, there are a few exceptions you're going to want to watch out for. The feet of the plume base get cut with your knife angled slightly inwards. The same thing with the concave curve of the neck guard. Angle that inwards too, and do it again on the top straight line of the cheek guards. Although with those, it's probably a good idea to wait with that top cut until you know the angle you're going to want. Oh yeah, and don't cut your fingers off. Glue time. I'm using hot glue for this project. Contact cement is also a good glue to use, especially if you're going to be taking your hat out somewhere hot where the hot glue might melt. I'm just not using it because it is bad for your health. So with hot glue, you want to apply an inch or two at a time, and then hold the edges together until the glue cools. This does require some patience, but even better than patience is a glue gun that has adjustable temperature. That way you can turn it as low as possible so the glue can cool quicker. Alright, so the first thing you want to do is glue all the V-cuts closed on pieces 2 and 3. Then glue pieces 3A and 3B together, starting from the front and working your way to the back, making sure to keep those alignment marks lined up. You'll notice me wiping excess glue away with my thumb sometimes. That's a good way to make the seam cleanup easier later. You just have to make sure the glue has cooled well enough before you do it so you don't burn your fingers off. And you gotta do it while you're still holding the parts together. I also like to press a bit on that seam with my thumbs while it's cooling. It just makes the two halves line up better. Okay, we've got a center piece. Now it's time for the sides. Grab piece 2A and attach it to piece 3A, starting at the front and working your way back. Sometimes you need to stretch or compress the foam a little bit to make the alignment marks line up, and that's okay, that's supposed to happen. Once one side's on, you can repeat for the second side, and pretty soon you should have a inside-out, almost helmet. While it's inside out, it's a great time to use a bit of scrap foam to scrub away any extra bits of glue that you have globbing around. Now you can carefully flip it all right side out, trying not to stress the glue joints too much. Grab the forehead strip, put just a little bit of glue in the center, and line that up with the center of the helmet. Now jump to the end of the strip and glue it into its little notch that it should just fit perfectly in. Same thing on the other end. Drop a bit of glue halfway between the center and the side. You'll notice if you push in on the foam on both sides of the glue, it helps close up that seam so the edges are nice and flush against each other. Now go back, squirt some glue in the remaining openings, and close the openings by pressing inward on the foam, thereby spitting the excess glue out the crack. If P and P don't match up perfectly, that's okay, but hopefully I'll have the pattern fixed up by the time you get it. Once one side of the forehead strip is done, go to the other side and do the same thing. Now it's getting pretty close to helmetness. It just needs a bit of foam stretchery. So grab onto the forehead strip and start stretching. As you can see here, I'm stretching the forehead strip just a little bit below the seam where it connects to the rest of the helmet. After stretching that, I'm also going to curve the bottom edge in towards the head. A bit more stretching, a bit more curving, and you can see how that front edge now has a more continuous curve with the rest of the helmet. There's also a tendency to have a bit of a flat spot right about here, so we're going to stretch the hat out right along that line as well. If you have some messy seams, now's a good time to clean them up by rubbing vigorously with a piece of scrap foam. If you don't have messy seams, good job, you're better than me. Next up, let's add the visor. That's important so the sun doesn't get in your eyes. Start by making a mark on each side 3 mm above the seam, then grab a flexible straight edge and tape it in the center of the helmet, with its edge directly over top of the forehead strip's glue seam. The ends get bent around to line up with the marks you just made. The whole point of this awkward rigmarole is just so you can draw a nice straight line around the front of the helmet for the visor to follow. Now you can glue the visor on, starting in the center, with the top edge of the visor following that line you just drew. Okay, next grab your neck protector, piece 4, which you hopefully cut that rounded part at an inward angle, and glue it to the back of the helmet along the bottom edge. Start by gluing the center, and then the edges, and then the bits in between. Give the neck protector a little squeeze, and you've got the base of your helmet done. Good job! Now you can go and celebrate by watching an eclipse with all your friends. If you don't have any friends, take your helmet and see if anyone else in your family appreciates it as much as you. If not, maybe it's because it's just not fancy enough. So let's add some details. These pieces are all cut from 2mm craft foam, and we're gonna start with the candy cane, number 11. Glue the candy cane so it goes right around the ear cutout, working your way a bit at a time from the front to the back. Before you've glued the back all the way down, make a mark where it overlaps the neck protector, cut it off, and finish gluing it down. Next we have the ear flaps, which are glued to the cut edge of the ear cutout as well as to the candy cane. Again, start from the front and work your way around and down. You want to try and keep the inside edge of the ear flap lined up with the inside edge of the ear cutout hole thing. Glue the bottom bit of the ear flap to the neck protector and cut off any excess. Next, cut a strip of foam for the front of the helmet. The length and width will depend on what size you're making though, so check the pattern for those dimensions. I'm using my Neo ruler for measuring, but a regular ruler works darn well too. Trim a slight curve on the end of the strip so it butts up perfectly against the candy cane. Mark a line down the center of the strip and create an impression down that line. I'm using my hacked hair straightener here, but you can also just rub over that line with the back of a spoon or some other object that's around 1 mm thick. Glue it in place starting at the edge with a nice curve cut, and when you get close to the other end, cut another nice curve and finish it off. The eyebrow is made by tracing piece 14, flipping it over and tracing it again. To add the center line to the foam, start by tracing over that line with a pencil. That way when you flip it over and trace over it again, it'll transfer onto the foam. To create a nice impression, I'm going to use the back of my scalpel handle and just rub really hard following that line. If you do use a scalpel, make sure the blade is pointing away from your hand, not towards it, like I just did. I also decided to do the same thing all the way around the outside edge, just so that edge would kind of taper in towards the helmet a bit more, rather than being a sharp square edge. Then I cut the eyebrow out, basically trying to stay in the middle of that groove I created. The eyebrow gets glued on the helmet with the point just a couple millimeters above the visor. Alright, well we've got a pretty good looking helmet now, but what happens if someone tries to stab us in the cheek? I guess we're gonna need some cheek guards. Grab your cheek guards and start heating them with a heat gun or a blow dryer. While they're still toasty warm, form them with your hands into a cheek guardish shape and let them cool. Cut a 12-inch by 17-inch sheet of foam diagonally in order to get a long enough strip to go around the cheek guards in one piece. Now you can mark and cut 2 4mm wide strips off that long edge. These strips are going to get glued down around the edge of the cheek guards, giving us a nice rim that we can paint a contrasting color to the rest of the cheek guard. When you're applying the strips over the glue, try to press them down from the inside to the outside. This squeezes any excess glue towards the outside edge, which is much easier to wipe off than if it had squeezed to the inside edge of the strip. Once you've gone all the way around, cut off any excess at the top.
Alright, I think I'm going to end the edit of this video here just so I can get it out this week, and then I'll do part 2 next week where I'll show you how I finished up the little bits of details, how I did this plume that goes on top, as well as painting. Also, if you're interested, I can show you what I did on this helmet to make it look extra super special. I really like how it turned out. It just involves a few more tools such as 3D printers and airbrushes and things like that. But still pretty fun. I do have the pattern already completed, so that'll be in the link in the description or around here somewhere. And yeah, see you next week. Thanks for watching. See ya. Next week.